All right, what's going on, everybody? It's Fast Cars, Fast Money. We're going over the final picks video for the Xfinity Series slate at Martinsville tonight. So, racing Friday night under the lights should be fun. It's a 250 lap race, short track. Sure, just like the truck race, we'll see a lot of beating and banging, and guys get moved out of the way, and tempers flaring. So, just going to be a really quick video, but I wanted to point out real quickly. Our goal eventually with this channel is to get up to 1,000 YouTube subscribers. We're only 13 away from 400, which is kind of the next milestone that we have. So our goal is to hopefully hit that 400 mark by the end of this weekend. But you guys are just here for the picks, so let's just dive right into it. So if you look at the top range from Gibbs down to Allgaier here, I think there are a lot of good plays here, and there's a bunch of different ways you could go. Me personally, I'm going to try to grab at least two of these drivers and then build the rest of my line around them. So I think it's a good idea to start with the driver who starts towards the front with the narrative of, hey, I think this driver is going to be the early dominator in this race. I think this driver can lead all of stage one. Very similar to what we saw at a Zane Smith last night in the Truck Series race. So for me, who potentially could that early lap leader be? All signs are pointing it to being Ty Gibbs, Justin Allgaier, or Noah Gragson. So I think you need to start your line with one of those plays. I think the most popular, or the driver who has the best chance of being that early dominator, is Ty Gibbs. He's the most expensive. He probably will carry the most ownership, but he's going to have that inside lane for the start. And we know the inside lane at Martinsville is king. So if he can get out front, get that early track position, if there aren't a ton of cautions early in stage one, I think he can just easily click off those laps led. And there's a lot of dominator points up for grabs. So you're going to need that driver that's out front. So I like starting with Gibbs. If you want to go contrarian, I think Allgaier is an interesting option just because he's going to come in significantly lower owned than Gibbs, and he's much cheaper, but he doesn't have as much upside, I think, as Gibbs does, and I don't see his dominator potential as high or as likely as Gibbs is. The other interesting narrative is, Gragson starts third. So if Allgaier has a bad start, or if Gibbs is able to pull away, Gragson is tucked in right behind Gibbs, and he can easily, slide himself in the second, and could only take, 5-10 laps for him to get in front of Gibbs. And then he potentially could be that early dominator. So again, not as likely as Gibbs. I think my favorite play would be Gibbs of the three of them, but I can see you making an argument for playing Gragson and or Allgaier. But I think you need one of those plays as the early dominator. And then I really like pairing either Gibbs, Gragson, or Allgaier with then either a Josh Berry or an AJ Allmendinger. These are two drivers who I think who have a ton of upside, who can get up front, probably not until at least stage two, maybe stage three in the race. They're both race winning contenders, and they give you a little place differential upside as well. So you have to play that narrative out in your head of like, okay, I think Gibbs, Gragson, or Allgaier could be that early dominator. And then through pit strategies or, later in the race, these cars might cycle to lead. And then I think maybe Berry or Allmendinger potentially could take over. So I like some combination of a Gibbs, Gragson, Allgaier, and then pairing one of those drivers with a Josh Berry or an AJ Allmendinger, depending on what direction you want to go. From there, you get down to the 9K range. Dale Jr., I think, is going to draw a lot of ownership just because of, the name recognition, who he is, the car that he's in, the narrative of playing him. And he also is in a JRM car starting 30th. So unlikely he's going to lead you any laps. But, maybe he can run inside the top 10, and, it looks like a good place differential play at least. So don't play Dale Jr. expecting him to dominate. You're playing him, expecting to gain you a lot of place differential points and hopefully finish inside the top 10. Daniel Hemrick's an interesting GPP option. I don't think he's going to carry a ton of ownership just because I think everyone's going to go to Earnhardt, or everyone's going to stack these drivers up high, and they're not going to get to Hemrick. We showed some pretty good pace in practice, and he's run well here the last couple of races at Martinsville. So I think he's an interesting GPP option. Not really interested in Brandon Jones. Sam Mayer is he's in a JRM car starting 21st. So If you're looking for a pivot off of Dale Jr., I think Sam Mayer is an interesting option. He starts a little bit closer to the front, but he's in the same equipment. The upside that Mayer has, he's in this car every single week where, Dale Jr. is just out there, having fun. So I think he is an interesting pivot off of Dale Jr. and saves you, basically $1,000. And then from there, not really interested in Castle, Creed, or Truex. Yeah, Truex is in the JGR 18 car, but him starting fourth, it's just hard to see him passing, Allgaier, Gregson, and Gibbs to get the early jump on the lead. And I don't see him getting his way up to the front. Starting fourth, he's kind of in that no man's land. Hill, Herbst, and Burton, I think, are interesting plays for different reasons. Austin Hill has been pretty consistent. Doesn't always have the best speed, but he usually is there at the end and he's getting you good finishes. So starting 14th, I can easily see him finishing 8th or finishing 7th, which will offer you, some good value at his price. Herbst, I don't think will carry a ton of ownership. People are usually afraid to play Herbst, but he actually ran pretty well at Martinsville last year, and he was one of the few cars who actually stayed out for the majority of practice, and it got a long run in. So I think he likes his car a lot. He kind of has a good understanding of, what he needs and, where that equipment is for the race tonight. So I think he offers some good value at his price. It's a pretty cheap price to pay for a Stewart-Haas, racing car. Riley Herbst is usually hit or miss, and more often than not, it's miss, but I think he's an interesting GPP option. Jeb Burton's probably a little bit more of a cash play. He didn't practice very much, which means I don't think he really liked his car. But it looks like they were able to come in, make some adjustments, and he was able to post somewhat of a better qualifying time. But starting 25th, I don't think there's a lot of downside there. I wouldn't be surprised if he stalls out like 18th or 17th or something. And I don't know, if you're trying to win a tournament, I'd rather play, Herbst or Hill, who I think have some better finishing potential upside than Burton does. Moffitt starts a little too close to the front. Alfredo, I'd rather just pay up for Jeb, who starts further back. Mike Snyder never feels good when you land on him. It's always a risk if you decide to roster him. In the times when it looks like he's going to be a good play, it never works out. The times when it doesn't look like he's going to be a good play, usually it doesn't work out either. However, I like getting to Snyder in this range just because of how cheap he is, where he starts, and the practice speeds that he posted. It looks like he had a pretty fast car. So anything can happen. I don't feel great about it, but I also don't hate it either, especially when you look at some of the other guys priced around him. There isn't too many other plays we're super high on down here. Sieg starts a little too close to the front. Brandon Brown, I think, is going to finish around where he starts. But Parker Retzlaff would be the other guy if you're not comfortable playing Snyder. I don't know if Retzlaff is any more comforting just because he doesn't have a ton of experience, but he really impressed us last week at Richmond. Basically starts right next to Snyder, is a little bit cheaper. His equipment, I don't think, is as good as Schneider's is, but if he's able to put together a run like he did last week, I'll easily take that at $7,000. Getting to the 6K range, not getting the Clements or LeBay today. Derek Griffith, if you're playing him based off of, two reasons. A, the equipment that he's in, and B, where he starts. It's not going to be pretty, doesn't have a ton of upside, but this equipment is good enough for a top 25 finish, and starting 36 isn't going to hurt your day, so I don't mind getting to him. Jade Buford has just been annihilating us all year long. No matter how often we continue to play him, he continues to burn us, so keep that in mind. But he should have the equipment, and these road racers usually perform well at Martinsville because it's a short, technical type of track with, kind of similar, corners. So, and he starts pretty deep in the field, and he's pretty cheap, so I don't mind that. Mason Massey would be a little bit more of a GPP play starting 26th. I also like JJ Yaley a lot. Starts deep in the field. He's a veteran driver. He's raced here years and years and years. Not in the best equipment, but he's someone who I can see just keeping his car clean. And as other guys are kind of wrecking around him or getting into trouble, I can see him slowly advancing himself throughout the race. And hopefully if his equipment stays together, I can see him, contending for a top 25 today. not getting to Curry, Weatherman, Graff, Parsons, or Vargas. It just, none of them really jump out, as viable punt plays for me. Shane Lee starts too high. David Starr looks like a good punt play. He starts pretty deep. All we need is a top 25 finish out of him, which I don't think is, out of the realm of possibilities. And with how cheap he is, you can really stack some of those 10K and 9K drivers that we like. Matt Mills, I guess, would be a pivot off of David Starr. He didn't really run that many laps in practice, which is concerning. There's a good chance, he's just a back marker for the entire day. But if he is able to run, starting 37th isn't going to hurt your day. Not getting the Brennan Poole. Howie DeSavino would be like your GPP punt option just based off of the equipment that he's in, but I think he should come in pretty low on with the starting grid there. And then, believe it or not, Natalie Decker did make the race. Starts dead last, didn't have great pace. It's not going to be a pretty play. All you're looking for is her to stay on the track, and you're hoping that these other drivers wreck out. I don't think you have to go down that low, but she can't lose you any points by any means. And if it allows you to stack some of these top plays up here that we like, I don't hate it. But yeah, that'll do it for the Xfinity picks. So best of luck, everybody, tonight. We'll have our Cup Series video and sheet posted after practice and qualifying. But best of luck, everybody, and thank you guys for the support.